The ballroom shimmered under golden chandeliers as waiters glided between tables dressed in diamonds and champagne. Aaliyah Cole, a beautiful hot black woman, age 30 with deep brown skin, balanced a silver tray and a tired smile. Across the hall, Madeline Pierce, a white woman in her 40s wearing a glittering silver gown, leaned over an antique display case that held a crystal-beaded couture dress meant for auction. Aaliyah stepped forward politely. "Ma'am, please don't touch the gown. It's part of the exhibit." Madeline turned, wine glass trembling slightly in her manicured hand. "Excuse me? Did you just tell me what to do?" Soft murmurs rippled through the guests. Aaliyah stood her ground, voice calm. "I'm only protecting the collection, ma'am." Madeline's smile stiffened into venom. "You people and your rules, always pretending you belong somewhere you don't." Before Leah could react, the woman's heel caught her tray. Glasses shattered. Champagne sprayed across Madeline's gown. Gasps filled the room. She did this on purpose. Madeline screamed. In one violent motion, she grabbed Aaliyah's shoulder and ripped the seam of her uniform. The fabric tore loud enough to silence the orchestra. "Trash like he doesn't deserve to touch this dress." Every camera in the room flashed. Guests froze. And near the entrance, Ethan Pierce, Madeline's millionaire husband, stared in disbelief, watching his wife destroy someone's dignity for sport. Aaliyah's eyes glistened, not with tears, but restraint. "Please, ma'am, I was just doing my job." If this already made your blood boil, hit like and subscribe right now, because stories like this are still happening, and the world needs to hear them. Security moved in. Ethan gestured coldly. "Escort her out." Aaliyah's hand shook as two guards led her through the murmuring crowd. She kept her chin high, refusing to cry in front of them. Behind her, Madeline dabbed fake tears while guests whispered sympathy. But Ethan's eyes lingered on the torn uniform, unease creeping into his chest. Something about his wife's performance didn't add up. In the hallway, Aaliyah pressed her back to the wall, heartbeat racing. She reached inside her apron, where a tiny red light blinked. The recorder had captured everything. Her humiliation wasn't the end of the night. It was the beginning of justice. The ballroom noise faded behind her as Aaliyah Cole walked down the service corridor, shoes clicking against the marble floor. Her hands trembled, but her face stayed composed. Inside her apron pocket, that tiny recorder still blinked red. Proof that truth had a voice tonight. She pushed open the staff door and stepped into the narrow hallway that smelled of coffee and disinfectant. Lydia, the senior floor captain, hurried toward her, eyes wide. "I saw what she did, honey," Lydia whispered. "That woman tripped you on purpose." Aaliyah swallowed hard. "Then why didn't anyone say anything?" Lydia sighed, glancing toward the ballroom doors. "Because people like her don't need truth. They buy silence." Aaliyah nodded slowly, the sting in her chest deepening. Not forever. Outside, the cool night air met her like mercy. She exhaled and looked up at the glowing hotel sign. She was supposed to be just another waitress finishing a shift, not a woman humiliated in front of 200 rich strangers. As she waited by the staff exit, her phone buzzed. A message from her brother. "Marcus, you okay? You still at work?" She typed back quickly. "Yeah, long night. I'll explain later." She slipped the phone away and pulled out a folded ID card. Stanford University. Doctoral candidate. Sociology department. Her real life. Her real fight. Every shift she worked here helped pay her brother's hospital bills and fund her research on racial bias in elite workplaces. Irony never hit this hard. Meanwhile, inside the ballroom, Ethan Pierce stood frozen near the broken glass. His wife, Madeline, still played the victim, tears perfectly staged, hands trembling for the crowd. But Ethan's instincts told him something was off. He'd built his empire reading people, and the black waitress's face didn't match guilt. It matched restraint. "Are you sure she attacked you?" he asked quietly. Madeline's eyes flashed. "You saw it, Ethan. She tripped, ruined my gown," he interrupted, calm but cold. "No, I saw you lose your temper." Her smile faltered for just a moment, a crack in the porcelain. Ethan looked toward the corridor where Aaliyah had vanished, The image of her torn uniform burned into his mind. He didn't know it yet, but that single glance would change everything. The hotel parking lot was empty by the time Aaliyah Cole reached her old sedan. She sat behind the wheel, staring at her reflection in the rear-view mirror. The tear in her uniform cut straight across her chest like an open wound. She took a deep breath, pulled out the small recorder, and pressed play. Madeline's shrill voice filled the car speakers. "Trash like he doesn't deserve to touch this dress." Then the sound of fabric ripping, the gasps, and her own calm reply, "Please, ma'am, I was just doing my job." Aaliyah's jaw tightened. Let them lie. The truth's already saved. She closed the recorder, placed it gently on the seat, and leaned back. Outside, the ballroom lights flickered through the trees like distant fireworks. Beautiful, expensive, and empty inside the Pierce penthouse. Ethan Pierce stood by the window, still in his tuxedo, glass of whiskey untouched. Madeline paced behind him, voice cracking with false tremor. "She humiliated me, Ethan, in front of everyone." He didn't turn. "You tripped her, didn't you?" Her face froze. "What are you talking about?" "I watched you." His tone was low, steady, and for the first time, I didn't recognize the woman I married. Madeline folded her arms. "You're taking her side? A waitress?" "No," Ethan said quietly. "I'm taking the side of whoever's telling the truth." Across town, Aaliyah climbed the stairs to her tiny apartment. Lydia was waiting by the door, holding 2 paper cups of coffee. "You left before I could talk," Lydia said, stepping inside. "You okay?" Aaliyah forced a small smile. "I will be. I got everything on tape." Lydia's eyebrows lifted. "You recorded her?" "Accidentally. My thesis field notes were running. Guess tonight turned into research." Lydia chuckled softly. "Honey, that's more than research. That's evidence." Aaliyah set the recorder on the table. Its red light still blinking. She thinks I'm powerless. Let's see how she handles the truth when it's her face on it. Lydia sipped her coffee, nodding slowly. "Careful, though. Women like her, they don't fight fair." "I know," Aaliyah replied, eyes burning steady. "But I'm done staying quiet." She pressed stop, the red light vanished, and in that silence, something stronger replaced the shame. "If this happened right in front of you, what would you do? Tell me in the comments. I read every one. And if you want justice as much as I do, hit subscribe." Morning sunlight poured through the windows of a quiet cafe in downtown San Francisco. Aaliyah Cole, dressed in a black coat and soft curls tied neatly behind her head, walked in carrying a small flash drive. She spotted Ethan Pierce seated in the corner booth. No suit, no arrogance. Just a man who'd spent the night rethinking everything. He stood as she approached. "Miss Cole," he said carefully, "thank you for agreeing to meet." "I'm not here for an apology," she replied, sliding into the seat. "I just want you to hear what really happened before your wife rewrites history." Ethan nodded once. "That's fair." She placed a flash drive on the table and pressed play on her recorder. The cafe filled with Madeline's venom. "Trash like you doesn't deserve to touch this dress." Then the sound of fabric tearing, gasps, and silence. Ethan's shoulders slumped. She really said that?" Aaliyah didn't flinch. "You saw it. You just didn't want to believe it." He looked down at his coffee, ashamed. "You're right. I didn't. I reacted like everyone else, protecting image over integrity." Aaliyah leaned forward. "So what are you going to do now? Ignore it? Or fix it?" He looked up, eyes steady. "I want to fix it. Not with words, with action. My company's been under fire for diversity issues. You study workplace bias, right?" She hesitated. "I'm a doctoral researcher at Stanford. Racialized microaggressions in elite spaces. That's my thesis." Ethan nodded slowly. "Then work with me. Audit my company. Tell me what's broken, and I'll back every change you recommend." Aaliyah studied him, skeptical. "You'd hire the woman your wife tried to humiliate?" "I'd hire the only person in that ballroom brave enough to tell the truth," he said quietly. She looked at him for a long moment, then slid the flash drive toward him. "You'll have the full audio. All 20 minutes. Do what you need to. Just know I'm not protecting anyone. Ethan reached across the table, not to shake her hand, but to show sincerity. I don't expect protection, he said. I expect honesty. Aaliyah stood, gathering her coat. Then you'll get more than you bargained for. As she walked away, Ethan stared at the small flash drive, realizing it didn't just hold a recording. It held a mirror to everything he'd ignored. The glass doors of Pierce Global Holdings slid open with a soft chime. Inside, everything gleamed. White marble floors, chrome elevators, art that looked expensive enough to buy silence. Aaliyah Cole, dressed in a navy suit and carrying her laptop bag, walked through the lobby with quiet determination. Heads turned. People whispered. No one said it out loud, but everyone knew she was the waitress from the gala. An assistant approached. Miss Cole? Mr. Pierce asked me to show you to the HR floor. Aaliyah smiled politely. Thank you. Inside the conference room, she opened her laptop, inserted the encrypted drive, and began her task. Conduct a full audit of the company's internal culture. No filters, no fear. She started with interviews. Employees from every level. A young white designer admitted nervously. You have to talk like them to get promoted here. A black accountant said softly, they don't call us diversity hires anymore. They just say we don't fit the culture. Aaliyah typed each word without expression. Thank you for your honesty. By the end of the day, her notes were full of patterns. Not isolated stories, but system. A system that looked polished on the outside and rotten underneath. Across the city, Madeline Pierce slammed her tablet onto the vanity table. What do you mean she's working for my husband now? She barked at her publicist. The woman's voice wavered. He hired her as an internal consultant. He says it's to fix company culture. Madeline's eyes narrowed. No, it's to fix me. She picked up her phone and dialed her lawyer. Alan, I want you to find something on her. Anything. School records, past jobs, social media. She's not clean, no one is. Back at the office, Aaliyah saved her files and rubbed her temples. Lydia appeared at the door holding 2 coffees again. Day 1, huh? Aaliyah smiled faintly. Day 1, and I already see the cracks. Lydia nodded. Good, but watch your back. When powerful people feel cornered, they start digging for dirt. Aaliyah closed her laptop. Let them dig. The deeper they go, the more truth they'll find. Outside the window, the city light shimmered, calm on the surface, boiling underneath. Change had started, and no one could stop it now. The next morning, the media storm finally broke. Headlines flashed across every screen. Waitress turned whistleblower, Pierce empire under fire. Inside the company auditorium, reporters gathered for a press conference. Cameras clicked, microphones lined the stage. Ethan Pierce adjusted his tie, scanning the crowd. Aaliyah Cole stood just off stage, composed, silent, her face unreadable. Ethan stepped to the podium. We're not here to hide from what happened, he began. We're here because it's time to fix what we've ignored. Flashes burst like lightning. Yes, there was an incident at the gala, he continued. Yes, it was mishandled. And it exposed something far bigger than one night. It showed what power looks like when it forgets compassion. He turned slightly toward Aaliyah. We brought in someone who faced that moment with strength and truth. Her name is Aaliyah Cole, a sociologist, a consultant, and a woman whose courage forced this company to confront its reflection. Aaliyah blinked, startled. That part hadn't been in the prepared statement. Ethan gestured toward her. Miss Cole, would you like to say something? The room went still. Aaliyah stepped forward, the camera swiveling to follow her. Her voice was calm, measured, but full of emotion. I didn't come here to expose anyone, she said. I came here because someone tried to silence me. And I realized silence protects the powerful, not the innocent. No one moved. Reporters lowered their pens just to listen. We can't fix what we don't face, she continued. And today we're facing it. Applause broke out slowly, then louder, echoing through the hall. Ethan turned toward her, pride softening his face. Across town, Madeline Pierce sat in her marble kitchen, watching the broadcast on her phone. Her hands trembled around her wine glass as Aaliyah's words filled the room. "She's stealing my life," she whispered. "She's turning my shame into her glory." No one answered. Even the housekeeper pretended not to hear. Madeline slammed the glass onto the counter, shattering it. But the truth was already out, and for the first time, it wasn't hers to control. Days later, the city skyline looked different. Or maybe it was Aaliyah who had changed. In her small apartment, the morning sunlight touched her laptop screen, where the words Pierce Group Diversity Reform, Draft 1 glowed across the document. The media had crowned her a hero overnight. CNN, New York Times, and half of social media wanted her story. But Aaliyah didn't chase fame. She chased balance. Her phone buzzed. A message from Ethan Pierce. "We've implemented the first stage of your recommendations. The board approved all changes." She smiled faintly, typing back, "Good. Just make sure it's real, not cosmetic." Across the bay, Ethan watched his wife's seat at the dining table. Empty for the third day in a row, Madeline Pierce had retreated from public life. Her foundation suspended, her reputation reduced to whispers in the same circles that once worshipped her. He turned his phone face down, staring out the window. Some losses had to happen before people learned who they really were. Later that evening, Aaliyah met Lydia for coffee near Union Square. "I can't believe it," Lydia said, grinning. "You're trending with your own quote. We can't fix what we don't face." Aaliyah chuckled softly. "I didn't mean for it to go viral." "Maybe not," Lydia said, "but people needed to hear it. You gave them words for what they feel every day." Aaliyah looked down at her cup, the steam curling like a slow sigh. "I just told the truth." Lydia smiled. That's why it worked. They sat in silence for a moment, listening to hum of traffic and the sound of distant laughter. For once, the world outside didn't feel hostile. It felt awake. That night, Aaliyah stood on her balcony overlooking the glowing city. Her phone buzzed again. A new message, this time from a university contact. "Stanford Symposium. We'd be honored to have you speak this fall." She laughed quietly to herself. From a waitress no one saw to a voice people finally heard. Aaliyah closed her laptop, whispering to the night, "This is just the beginning. If you believe this should never happen again, share this now." And to my USA, UK, and Canadian viewers, your voice is power. Use it.